And on the line with us is David Daley, the author of Ratf, Why Your Vote Doesn't Count, Senior Fellow and Communications Director with Fair Vote, which is working to render the Electoral College irrelevant, and former editor-in-chief at Salon. Fairvote.org is the website. But most consequentially, David recently wrote a piece called How the Republicans Rigged Congress that is absolutely breathtaking. David, welcome back to the program.
Always a pleasure, Tom. Thanks for having me back.
Thanks for joining us. Tell us, how did the Republicans rig Congress?
Well, it's a story of gerrymandering and redistricting that goes back years. In my book, I talk about how the Republicans had a specific strategy to use control of state legislatures in the 2010 election in order to dominate a redistricting in the year after the 2010 census, when all of those state legislatures draw the lines Congress. What I discovered by going through new documents and internal Republican documents and fundraising plans and emails and PowerPoints is that this goes back as far as early 2008. In these documents, in these previously unrevealed emails and once secret documents, they show how early the Republican planning began, just how comprehensive the redistricting strategy was, and how determined these conservative operatives were to just dye America red from the ground up. They pulled off a coup. By raising $30 million, they were able to take control of enough state legislative chambers in the 2010 election to draw on their own 193 of the 435 U.S. House seats. Democrats only had the ability to draw 44 of these on their own. It put the Democrats in a big hole in state legislatures across the country and also in Congress, and it is deeply consequential in that as Democrats try and fight back, they have got this huge structural disadvantage in state after state. You see it in Virginia, 174,000 more votes for Democrat candidates there for the House of Delegates. Republicans still hold on to the chamber. The blue wave is going up against a red seawall, and it was a specific strategy going back years.
David Daley, to what extent, to hypersimplify this, would this characterization be accurate? You get a bunch of petro-billionaires and their friends, the Kochs and the Koch network, and probably a few others, Mercer, Adelson. Don't know if they're directly part of that. But anyhow, you get a couple of billionaires, and they're saying to themselves, you know, if we could take over a political party, then we could be worth, you know, not just, you know, $80 billion. We could be worth $100 billion, $120 billion. I mean, we could massively increase our net worth to the tune of billions of dollars a year if we could just get the Republicans to control these state legislatures and this federal apparatus. And then we could get, you know, a $5 trillion tax break as they just got. Then we could get our businesses deregulated so that we can poison more people but make more profits. And so, hey, let's invest a few $100 million. Let's even invest up to $1 billion long term over the whole thing into this, and we'll get, you know, a 10, 20, $30 billion return on investment. Very simple, very transactional, and you know, is that an accurate characterization of what we're seeing here?
It's an accurate description of what has happened, except it didn't cost anywhere near that much. Our political system was an even bigger bargain to these people. The Republicans run a play called Red Map. It's short for the Redistricting the Majority Project. It only costs $30 million. This is chump change in American politics. It's chump change for the big corporations, for the oil companies and the insurers and the business.
But it's huge money for a union or for anybody who supports Democrats.
It is a lot of money on that side. But on this side, it was nothing. And they essentially were able to purchase the entire system for a song. You can't lose a U.S. Senate race these days for less than $100 million. For $30 million, Republicans were able to turn state legislatures red across the country, even in swing states, even in blue states like Pennsylvania and Michigan and Ohio and Wisconsin and North Carolina, and they were able to make it possible so that even in years when Democrats get more votes, Republicans not only have more seats, but they often have veto-proof supermajorities in all of these states. So they have the ability to enact their agenda in state after state, even when they get fewer votes. And we see what that agenda is. The first thing they do is go after voting rights. The second thing they do is go after labor rights.
Wow. So what can we do about this, David?
Well, it is a very complicated process back. I mean, the Democrats are trying to win control of these state legislative races back. It is an uphill battle. There is amazing litigation going on. There are two key cases at the Supreme Court right now about partisan gerrymandering, Wisconsin and Maryland. You just had a case in Pennsylvania in which the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania, using the state constitution, which mandates free and equal elections, ripped up the entire congressional map that has given Republicans 13 of 18 seats this entire decade out of a blue state that has Democrats for all of its state officers.
Right.
So Democrats get 51, 52% of the vote in Pennsylvania, but they've only had 28% of the seats all decade, and they haven't managed to flip a single seat. So that is an extraordinarily consequential
well, this is the one that went to the Supreme Court, isn't it?
Yes. That just went to the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans have tried to fight it. They've tried to first get the maps stayed, and Justice Alito said no. The Supreme Court's not going to get involved in a case involving a state.
And now the Republicans are trying to impeach the state Supreme Court justices.
Impeach the state Supreme Court justices that did this, and the state Senate president is refusing to give up the data that is necessary, and the new maps that they've turned in are actually even a bigger partisan gerrymander than the older one. So
wow.
It is a sign of just how serious the Republicans take this ability to draw these lines, how tenaciously they will fight to maintain their control, how they will even attack the integrity of the judicial system. What we need is serious structural reform in this country. At Fair Vote, we've been pushing for the Fair Representation Act, which would take the drawing of these lines not only out of the hands of politicians, but it would create larger multi-member districts. It would create ranked choice voting in all of these states for members of Congress, and also independent commissions.
Can that be done with straight legislation, or does that require an amendment to the Constitution?
You could do this simply by passing a bill in Congress. It's as simple as passing one law. We could get the extremism out of our politics. We could get the money out of our politics. We could put the people back in charge.
To what extent have other countries done what this law that you're promoting proposes?
We are essentially the only democracy in the world that allows the politicians to choose their own voters. In country after country around the world, other democracies use some version of this in order to elect their legislatures. It works better. It creates a much fairer system, and people actually have control again.
And people can learn more about this at fairvote.org.
Fairvote.org and the Fair Rep Act.org.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
Yeah. David, we have about 25, 30 seconds. What else can people do? Is it also possible that just massively turning out Democratic voters will help?
Huge voter turnout helps, but I think people sometimes feel as if they can't do anything about an issue as serious and structural and long-term as this, except what we have seen is that the Supreme Court case in Wisconsin is a result of actual activists turning out, pressure in North Carolina, Ohio, Michigan, Oklahoma, Virginia. All of these states have seen real, genuine voter citizen activism has put pressure on politicians. If we talk about these structural problems, it takes them out.
Then we can fix them. Yeah.
Dave,
we're hitting a break here. I'm sorry. Dave Daley, author of Ratf, Why Your Vote Doesn't Count.